Hi, everyone. I'm David Kelly, Program Director for the eLearning Guild, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another Twist Conversation. Today I'm pleased to be welcoming Anthony Altieri from the American Red Cross. Welcome, Anthony.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I wanted to invite you today. I know you're going to be speaking at the Learning Solutions Conference on LMSs, and I wanted to have a conversation about that with you today. Before we get started, can you take a moment and introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure. So as you said, my name is Anthony Altieri with the American Red Cross. I'm with the e-learning administration for the Red Cross. My duties include system administration for what is one of the largest LMSs on planet Earth. Actually, we've had two with over 20 million students, millions of courses, hundreds, if not thousands of hours of online content. And we're actually in the process now of building our own custom LMS, and myself personally, I'm working on building our custom content management system.
Wow. And that was 20 million, you said, right?
Yes.
Wow. That's probably more than the average person watching this video has using their LMS. That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, we have a couple. We have a few.
So you've obviously got a lot of experience in the space, and you're using your learning management system tremendously. So when you're talking about learning management systems, and if I'm going to go out and I'm going to select one, I'm curious about what it is that people need. How do you determine what it is that you need from a learning management system when you're going out to select one? And related to that is, how do you determine what it is that you need as compared to what you might want? How does someone get started with that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's probably the most difficult part of the process, honestly, because you have to, before you even get to that point, you have to look at who are your stakeholders going to be, who are going to be using this, and in what way are they going to be using that, to be able to figure out what you're going to need that to do. And the LMS system in general is going to track your students, enrollments, certifications, completions, things like that. But a lot of folks now are also using them to tie into HR systems. So, for example, whether or not you get a pay raise may be dependent on what courses you've taken, what certifications you have. Promotions, if you want to become management, there may be a training requirement involved in that. So a lot of folks are seeing integrations there that we have not traditionally seen in the past. So it's not just a question of what training do I need to track, what am I going to do with that information, and who are my consumers of that information going to be internally and maybe even externally. So, you know, that's the big thing, is really look at who's going to be using that and how are they going to be using that, find them, and then sit down and start having those conversations about how is how is that information going to be shared, and how is it going to be used.
Excellent. So now once I've got that list and that plan that I'm setting forward, then it's a matter of implementing it. And for a lot of organizations, especially people who are implementing LMSs for the first time, there's a lot of unexpected things that happen and a lot of mistakes that are made. And especially someone like yourself who's got this experience, you've gone through the process a couple of times, what are some of the pitfalls and mistakes that you see people often making when it comes to selecting and implementing a learning management system?
I think the biggest thing is you have to look at an LMS, well, and really I'll even back up a little bit. Whether it's an LMS or an email system, any kind of an enterprise software system, you really need to think about where am I today and where am I going to be in a few years. And you want to kind of future-proof that system. You don't want to build a system that is for today without thinking about, okay, what changes am I going to need? Where is my business going to grow? Where are my users going to grow? That's probably the biggest thing that I've seen in talking. Certainly I'll plead guilty that we did this in several cases, but also in talking to other folks in the community. That's probably the biggest thing, is they don't think about 6, 12, 24 is kind of my war cry. But even with an LMS, you're not spending a couple of bucks. These are very expensive propositions. You really want to be thinking 5 years out. And that's probably the biggest mistake I see folks make, because they don't think that far out. The other mistake, well, I don't want to say mistake, but the other pitfall that I'll see is folks will look at an LMS and they think, well, all I need to worry about are licensing fees or, buying a computer, whatever. There's actually a lot of costs that go into that. If you're implementing an LMS, or even if you're switching from one LMS to another, it's not just go out and buy, or get a license for Saba or SuccessFactors or SumTotal or Meridian or whomever. maybe you're going from one database to another. That's not just going to translate. There's a lot of translation that has to happen, reformatting fields, changing data formats and everything to go from one database to another. And there's a lot of things like that go on. Again, getting back to those those integration points. Well, if you're integrating with an HR system that has certain expectations of how data is going to look, is it going to look that way? And they don't think past that box. They don't think past the LMS itself. And really, again, it's a big mistake. You really need to stand back and look at the whole picture across the whole enterprise.
And you mentioned the idea of future of the. I like the model that you talk about the different milestones of how it's going to be used, because a lot of people think about it just from the standpoint of implementation, not how it's going to scale and be used. And as someone who's used these systems yourself over long periods of time, do you have any ideas or any examples of the types of things that can change from the day one of implementation to a year or 2 or 5 down the road that maybe people should be factoring into that idea of what might be changing long term with the usage of this system?
Yeah, absolutely. One example just from our case, we sell training as a service. We're the American Red Cross. Everybody knows you come to the American Red Cross for first aid, CPR training. And so we sell this as a service. And, well, that works great from an LMS standpoint, but as our business model changed, as our business structure changed, we needed to make sure our LMS could change with that. And, like I said before, we maybe didn't do a great job of that. So as things changed, like our corporate structure changed, management styles changed and everything, the LMS maybe couldn't keep up with that. So things like that you really need to look at. And unfortunately, there is no answer, well, do this and you're future-proofed. Every company is going to be very different. So again, you have to look at things like where is the market going? Where are your students going? Are they looking at, for example, there's a lot of things now about micro-learning, looking at the courses. Back in the day, courses were 6 hours long. Now we need them to be, a few minutes long sometimes. Can you take care of that in your LMS support, that kind of a transition over the long term? If you're selling services, we just went through a major change with credit card processing. Can your LMS keep up with the banking regulations and changes like that? So there's a lot to look at, and again, you have to stand back, look at the whole corporation, and look at where are your thought leaders within that company, where are they intending to take the company? Are they intending to stay in this market? Are they going to look at a new market? Is there regulation, for example? I was just talking to someone who the insurance agency or the insurance communities now, they have to have training and they have to be able to report on that training, which they didn't have to do a year ago, but that legislation was in the works for years. So you kind of need to look at that and, okay, what changes are coming from outside, what external forces sometimes.
Well, I know you're going to be doing a workshop exploring this in greater detail at the Learning Solutions Conference in Orlando this March, and one of the reasons that I was excited to be able to add this to the program is represented in what you were saying here, this idea of how to choose an LMS. It's not something that's just book knowledge. In order to do it right, you have to learn from someone who's done it. And having done it before, a couple of different times, know the pitfalls that you can do. It's a great opportunity for people to learn from someone who's been through it a couple of times already. So if I'm going to be coming to Orlando and I'm going to be attending your workshop, can you give me an idea of what my experience is going to be like as we take a deeper dive into this idea?
So sure, hopefully it'll be a good experience. What we're looking at is really a lot of activities, because again, when you look at an LMS, it's not something you do in a bubble. It's something you do in the community of your company or your industry or whatever. So we'll be looking at a lot of activities, a lot of group activities around collecting requirements, collecting needs, how to build the RFP and send that off to an LMS vendor or a third-party contractor, implementer maybe. We'll look at some ways to save a huge amount of time using SharePoint, Google Groups, and Google Docs in forming those requirements, collating those, putting those together in a reusable form. So you only have to build one spreadsheet, and then you can use that and broadcast that out to all the related participants. And we'll do all of that together as a group, and hopefully at the end of the day we'll have a fairly significant toolkit that everyone can take with them.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like a very actionable one, especially for people who are thinking about getting a new or switching their LMS and doing it properly as compared to blindly, as a lot of us have gone through in the past.
Yes.
Well, if you want to learn more about this workshop that Anthony's just talking about, or any of the workshops that are going on at the Learning Solutions Conference and Expo this year, please do visit our website, learningsolutions15.com. The Learning Solutions Conference and Expo takes place March 25th through the 27th in Orlando, Florida, with workshops taking place March 23rd and 24th. Again, if you want to learn more about the workshops or anything else going on at the conference, learningsolutions15.com. Anthony, I want to thank you so much for spending some time this afternoon talking to me about learning management systems.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
And I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Twist Conversations or this March in Orlando for Learning Solutions Conference and Expo. Take care, everybody.